Hi, I'm Dr. Jaime Module. Welcome to Module 15, Communities of Practice. In Part 3 of If You Want to Fly Higher, You Must Be Lighter. If you saw the film Apollo 13, you might recall the scene where there was a problem with getting oxygen to the astronauts. And to fix it, they didn't have the right parts. And so you saw on the ground in Houston, all the scientists working together with whatever parts they had in the module to be able to construct a makeshift device that would help keep the astronauts alive, to get them oxygen. And that was a kind of a community of practice. People were focused on this goal. They had to innovate something that didn't exist. They had to take parts of what they had and use it in a very different way to save lives. So that's one kind of community of practice. Another kind is in the medical field, and it should happen in more areas, but it's called holonomy. When one surgeon perhaps sees a problem, sees a surgery they need to take up, and they're not exactly sure of how they're going to proceed, they'll consult with someone else. So this idea of community of practice, bringing in others in the field to give feedback, to think through something. And even if you think of movements, the civil rights movement, it was never just one person, even though Rosa Parks, stood up, and wouldn't sit in the back of the bus. It was a movement of so many people that really was a community of action. And so this is really, really significant as we shift from this module to the next, from the survivor, thriver, getting more clear about what our contribution is to the universe. We start thinking about how we can share this contribution with others. In an earlier module, I talked about the Mondragon Community Cooperative, and that's a formal business model, and it's very, very powerful. Those kinds of things are very rare. The different examples that I gave aren't things that most people will participate in. So in this module, I want to think of a few different kinds of communities of practice that will help us individually and hopefully then lead us to be able to work with others to solve social problems such as the issues that have impacted us mostly. So community of practice is something that, a term that I used as a teacher educator for many years. And what we would do we would look at any teacher's work and their preparation in three domains, we call them. One was knowledge, what do they know in order to be effective and teach? Their dispositions, what are their attitudes, values, and beliefs? Because there's a strong correlation between a person's attitudes, values, and beliefs and the success of the people that they work with, in this case students, and their skills, basically, their performance. And so each of those is really important. Doesn't matter if a person knows a lot if they don't translate that, or if they don't like the people, or have problems working with people. Doesn't matter if a person's really nice and gets along with people if they don't know enough to be effective, or they don't have the skills to adjust to that particular need or situation. And again, if a person has really good skills but they don't keep up with new learning and they don't see themselves growing to be able to work in more and more ways, they're not going to be as effective. And so for us, as wounded healers, to whatever degree we identify with that, we'll be more effective when we continue to learn, when we continue to grow in our attitudes, values, and beliefs about who we were, who we are, and who we're becoming, and in the skills, in the ways that we can be effective, not just in managing our own boundaries, but in being agents of change to help society, to help other victims, to help end abuse, to help promote healing. Years ago, I lived in the jungles of Chiapas just for a summer, and I went there to study what were called base communities. And these were indigenous communities that worked together to try to figure out their problems. And they would sing a great song, and I'll try not to destroy it for you, but it was Comunidad, comunidad, cuánto alegría encuentro en ti, mi corazón encuentra amor, y mis hermanos caridad, y mis hermanos caridad, which means community, how much happiness I find in you. My heart finds love, and my brothers and sisters compassion. And so this community is really powerful. Now, we don't all have the chance to live in a community that is all about, helping each other. We have different kinds of community that I hope that you'll be able to take advantage of or create. Because just like I said in the earlier module, we should take action, we should have balance, and we should have company, we should go with others. We should have company and support in a real purposeful way as we go forward. So real quickly, there are a couple of different kinds of communities of practice. One basic one is, in a sense, like this course. It's a self-help group where we are focused on a particular issue, maybe healing, maybe bettering ourselves. Maybe it's related to a particular issue like abuse or other kinds of trauma. And we get together with other people to learn, to share, and to help each other to be more whole. And it's self-serving in a good way. As we have this interest for ourselves, we also have an interest of helping other people. It's problem-based. And it's a good place to, hopefully there's honesty and there's accountability and there's caring with other people, whether it's a face-to-face group or an online group as you're participating in. It's a container for our learning. And so it's not anything that I've made up. I participate in various kinds of self-help groups, but often there's a leader or a facilitator. There's some guidelines to it. 12-step groups have this kind of model. If you haven't participated in any of those, I think they're very valuable, and many people find them really spiritual as well. And so people will have a protocol. A facilitator or a leader will ask people to do some intro readings. People will go around and introduce themselves. They may have a topic. They may have a person speaking. They may have a study guide that everybody's kind of focusing on that guides their conversations. It's particularly useful, I think, for people in early stages of recovery, when people are real raw with their experience, when people need to learn more and also recognize more about their own attitudes, values, and beliefs that they experience as a result of their past trauma, abuse. And it's a very encouraging environment and valuable, particularly, again, I think, for people who are in the earlier stages. And it's a great place for people to give back, to share some of their learning, their wisdom that they've experienced in their own journeys. So that's one kind. It's a self-help group, addressing kind of more immediate needs of recovery. Another kind of group I would call a growth group. And the way I describe that is in the way that I've experienced it. And that's not a group that comes together around a particular theme or problem or issue that impacts us. In my experience, it was a year after a good friend from my seminary years passed away. A few of us got together, a few classmates got together and said, we have to get together more often. And out of that, one person invited a dozen men. And some of us stayed, and it's been going on for about 16 years. And that group is never about, sports and drinking or whatever. This was a group of accountability, a group where each of us could bring whatever was going on and be heard and be challenged to be better men. And so that it was my experience of a growth group, and then there are other versions of that. But it's different than, it wasn't a 12-step group. It wasn't focused around solving some particular problems. It was just being company to each other and kind of peer consultants in a sense. This is a place where everybody, that format, everybody had initially some, social connection around a meal. And when we got together in the discussion group, each person had an opportunity, maybe 15, 20 minutes, to share what was going on, and then to hear back what other people heard, what other people were seeing, what other people wanted that person to consider to be a better man. And so it was very affirming, and it was very challenging. Nobody skated, and that was a lifesaver. People shared their divorce, people shared illness, people shared loss of job, people shared all kinds of personal crisis. And so that was an incredibly important part of my own healing before all this experience came up around abuse, and it continued through on. And there's another kind of community of practice that I've kind of referred to earlier in the civil rights movement, and that's where people are trying to make society a better place. And while there are a lot of individuals in this healing movement, there are a lot of different groups that are trying to find ways to help victims and to help prevent abuse, to educate more than ever. 20 years ago, one of the groups that started as an individual was Survivors Network of Those Abused by a Priest. Now it's a huge international group. Similarly, there are others who, as individuals, started looking for solutions to deal with their own abuse, whether it was about kidnapping or incest or domestic violence or any number of things. Now there's a whole network of agencies and nonprofits that work together. One in San Diego actually called the Institute on Violence, Abuse, and Trauma. And they have part of that. It's called the International Network to Prevent Abuse and Trauma. And so we have more and more people who are really trying to do this, but there's no one huge movement at this point. So what I see is some aspects of leaders who are involved with that kind of work. And what I hope is that as more and more leaders meet and start to work together, that we really have this movement, something that is not just individuals or groups, but something that we can see systemic change. So in these leaders, in these people who are taking up this effort to promote healing and end abuse, I see service, as a model. And so the S in serve is people are really wanting systemic change. People have a vision of changing the conditions that promoted and allowed the abuse to happen in the first place. That vision is really important because then, as I talked about earlier, we don't have to take things so personally. We know that the work is what we're focused on, not our own, being liked, or we know that it's a lot of work and we're going to have to persevere. Enthusiasm, the E in serve, passion. Every one of the people that I have met who are taking up leadership roles, and others who are wanting to be of service as well, are passionate. No one takes up this topic to try to promote healing or end abuse as a casual thing. This is probably something that each of us has been impacted in a way that we want to make sure that the world is better, that this is our way to give back. This is a way to find meaning in our experience. And so earlier we've talked about the self, who are we, what's my purpose? This is really a powerful thing in leaders. Resiliency, the R in serve. This is hard work. And to deal with accountability, to deal with justice, to be effective, we really have to push through a lot of setbacks, push through a lot of rejection, push through a lot of challenges. The V in serve is values, and people have values of equity, values of justice, values of seeing everyone have a public life, having everyone have a voice, having everybody be able to use their power in society in a good way. And E, the people that I meet that are leaders and trying to help change society, they are really explorers. I mean, they have a sense of what they're wanting to do, but they have a sense of exploring shared leadership. And all those things together add up to serve. I invite you, as we finish this module now, to think about ways that you will serve. And that's what we'll be taking up in part 4.